Hi there. I'm straightening myself out. Hi. Hi there. I'm Lisa Taylor. This is Ideas on Truth. Welcome to the program. If you're watching on the replay, put a little hashtag replay and let me know where you're calling from or watching from. It is very interesting what's happened in the last week. I got a message. I don't remember if it was a message or an email from someone who asked me to do a show about weight loss. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I have struggled with food and weight loss and been addicted to food and been addicted to sugar pretty much my whole life. So it started me thinking about how there have been many things that I've been addicted to throughout my life. Hey, Deborah, thanks for watching. I have been addicted to bad relationships. I have been addicted to food. I've been addicted to sugar. I've been addicted to workaholic. I've been addicted to perfectionism. I've been addicted to, so many things. And what I realize is the pattern for me, and I really can only speak for me, but maybe some of you can relate to this. I'm hoping that the ideas that I share in this show will be helpful to some people. One of the themes that runs through all of the addiction for me is recognizing that anytime I'm addicted to something, it's always because I'm trying to find a solution outside of myself. I'm always trying to find something outside of me that will fulfill me on some level. If it's a relationship, I'm addicted to that person's view of me or how I feel when I'm around that person, or I'm trying to think of the one relationship that was really bad that I was addicted in. This was more than 30 years ago, a long time ago. But I was addicted to, very slowly, I got addicted to his decisions because I allowed him to sort of overtake my own sense of myself. It was just bizarre because I'm not that kind of person at all. I mean, you very slowly kind of chip away at something. And it's really that sense of thinking that there's something outside of you that will complete you. And when we fight against addiction, when we fight against this belief that somehow we're not whole already, when it comes to food, why would we be addicted to food when we feel somehow that food is going to fill up that hole in us? You hear a lot of people talk about, filling your soul instead of filling your stomach. And, there are all sorts of phrases that people use around trying to lose weight, trying to gain a sense of balance or gain a sense of self instead of trying to lose something. I found that to be true for me too. When I feel like I'm sort of out of control or I'm emotionally charged about something, I'll turn to comfort food, or I'll turn to, not as much now as I used to, but it's always, the root of addiction for me is always something outside of me is going to solve the problem. And I know for me that when I truly understand my spiritual identity, when I truly understand who I am, we talk a lot here about true north. When I align myself with my true self, my identity as a child of God, that fills me up. That makes me feel satisfied. It makes me feel whole and complete. And I'm not as apt to turn to food to feel a sense of comfort, or turn to a person to feel loved, or turn to a circumstance, or numb myself by working too much so that I'm not having to deal with my emotions and feel that sense of emptiness or stress or whatever it is. And there's a line in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Mary Baker Eddy wrote this book, and it says, let Christian Science instead of corporeal sense support your understanding of being. Now, I replace the words Christian Science. The definition of Christian Science is the law of God, the law of good. So I say, okay, let the law of good, instead of corporeal sense, support my understanding of being. And then that understanding will supplant error with truth, replace mortality with immortality, and silence discord with harmony. So it always goes back to the law of good, the law of God, the law of good, interpreting and demonstrating the divine principle and rule of universal harmony. So this science, this divine science, is the thing, and understanding my relationship to God and to good is the thing, is that key that helps that process of undoing that snarl, of to not rely on the corporeal sense, but rely on the spiritual sense. To let my understanding of my divine nature be the thing that unlocks discards the problem, essentially, replaces the problem with the truth. So just to address the viewer's question about losing weight, I have found for me that when I truly love myself, when I align my thought with who I am, and I get a more clear sense of my spiritual nature, and that it comes from God, and that there's nothing flawed or missing in it, that it is whole and complete, and I love that about myself, it's like it takes the pressure off. It takes away that fear that I'm going to be out of control at some point. And that's the thing that I'll find myself getting into a cycle where I'll feel sort of out of control and I'll be drawn to eating more. This doesn't happen as much as it used to, but I'm trying to sort of recall being in that frame of mind so that it might help someone else who's in that frame of mind now. And I remember there would be times, and it still happens, just not as often, there'd be times where I'll feel kind of out of control, and I'll feel like, I find myself eating and I'm not really even conscious of eating. Or I'll find myself standing in front of the refrigerator and just opening and closing it 16 times and nothing really seems good because I'm not really hungry. I'm just kind of wanting to quell that kind of frenetic energy in me that has really nothing to do with food. It has nothing to do with true hunger. It has to do with quelling that feeling out of control, or that feeling frustrated, or that the emotional eating, which I know a lot of people do, feeling comforted. So when I love myself enough to say, I'm worth taking care of myself, I'm worth treating myself well, I'm worth, and here's the trick that I do. If I allow myself anything and say, absolutely, you can have anything you want, then I don't want it because I'm coming from that sense of love. If I'm saying, oh no, I have to restrict all of these things, then I want it more because I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be told I can't do something. So if I say, absolutely, you can have anything you want, but do you really want anything you want? Or do you want to treat yourself well? And do you want to love yourself? And when it comes down to that, I want to be good to myself. I want to treat myself well and have things in balance. There's another line. There was a woman who had a really amazing healing of being overweight, actually. And she said she lost weight very quickly, like in 30 days lost, a lot of weight. I don't know, it was like a pound a day or even more than that. And she worked with this line, again, from this book. I know I quote this book a lot, but it just has so much good stuff in it. Consciousness constructs a better body when faith in matter has been conquered. Consciousness constructs a better body when faith in matter has been conquered. And it goes on to say, correct material belief by spiritual understanding, and spirit will form you anew. So it's correcting the material belief, correcting the belief that we are material. We are spiritual. We are spiritual qualities. We are spirit. We are spirit expressed. We are love and honesty and truth and consciousness and balance and all of these qualities that make up who we are. That's what we are. We are these qualities expressed. We're not this hunk of matter. And when we can see that we are this compilation of qualities expressed, it makes it a little bit easier to understand that if we change our thinking and change the way we view ourselves, that the expression of that will change and our body will reflect the change in our thought. Consciousness constructs a better body when faith and matter has been conquered. Consciousness constructs a better body. I saw a really interesting movie, and I highly recommend this movie to everyone. The Biggest Little Farm. It's my new favorite movie. And the thing that, I'm not going to be a spoiler. It's a wonderful movie, and I won't be a spoiler, but I will say this movie about this 200 acre farm, it's a pretty small farm in Moore Park, California, which is just north of me. It shows how nature balances itself. It has all of these examples through the movie that show how everything in nature is balanced and it all balances itself. There's one example where they have like 80 different varieties of stone fruits that they're growing in one part of this farm. And they have ducks and chickens and pigs, and I think they might have had goats, sheep, and I think they might have had some goats, cows, all these fruit trees, a pond. Also, it's this beautiful, beautiful place. And at one point they have a real big problem with snails coming in and eating the fruit trees and eating parts of the fruit trees so the fruit trees don't produce. And they had a mentor that had been helping them through it, and then the mentor is no longer able to help them. I won't tell you why. And they don't quite know what to do, but all through the movie, they allow nature to balance itself. And they come up with a solution. I'm not going to tell you the solution because that'll kind of spoil it for you, but they do come up with a solution that is a natural solution where nature, there's food for something, and then there's a predator for something, and there's food for something. So everything becomes food and a resource for something else. So why did I bring that up in relationship to this? Oh, I think it's because, when we trust that the divine laws are in place and we trust that everything does balance itself out, it does. If we just leave our bodies to God, leave the system. What is it? We take the best care of our body when we leave it the most out of our thought. That's another quote from this book. And it's true. When we focus on our spiritual nature and not focus on our physical bodies, when we leave it the most out of our thought, it balances itself out. We crave things that our body needs. If we really just listen intuitively to what is our body actually craving? What are we drawn to? I know there was a period in my life where I really wanted to eat like pineapple or cucumbers, or I forget what it was. It was something. And then I read later that, it has this particular vitamin in it. And it was something that my body was craving, and I didn't even know that. But if I just go with what looks really good and do it in consciousness, do it in moderation, do it with a sense of balance, and do it because you love who you are and you want to nourish yourself with good ideas and purity. I mean, I've in most recent years been very much about eating as organic as I can, eating as close to I've always tried to eat as close to the earth as I can. I'm not raw or vegan, but I'm mostly vegetarian. I'm a pescatarian. I eat fish still. But even now I'm starting to not eat as much of that. So I know there are a lot of people who are raw vegan, and sort of that's kind of one end of the spectrum, and then the other end of the spectrum is, eating sort of everything, an omnivore. There are lots of ways to kind of limit things and do all of that, and I just feel like everything in moderation and feeling like a variety of things is good. Trying to eat a large variety of things. And I don't want to be here talking about sort of diets and that kind of thing and exercise. And I do exercise regularly. I love to run. So that's something that I do. But that's more for my mental health than anything else. Because if I don't run every day, or most days, or hike, or do something, get out there and move my body, there's too much energy in me, so I want to go burn some of it off so I'm not like biting people's heads off. I tend to talk really fast if I don't get some exercise. So the whole addiction idea, the whole sense of it really, for me, it comes down to not looking outside of me to feel fulfilled, not looking outside of me to be satisfied, to really turn inward and to meditate and to pray and to dwell in thought on what is true, what is absolutely true, not what our five physical senses are telling us is true. I mean, we can go back to the celestial spheres and say, what did we all used to believe way back when? That the earth was the center of the universe. And the five physical senses will tell us one thing, but the truth is something else. And that's true for our bodies too. It's true for our relationships. It's true for so many things. We think that getting close to another human is how we're going to feel loved. No, because that's changeable. And that person could be gone in an instant. You could be gone in an instant. Are you still going to feel love? Of course you are. But why? Because it comes from source. It doesn't come from another person. And the sooner we realize that everything we need comes from our source, from the source of our being, and not from something outside of us, the sooner we will be able to let go of whatever addiction we're holding on to, whether it be food or exercise or work or money or sex or smoking or alcohol or drugs or, opioids or whatever it is. Whatever it is, the substance outside of us, substance, person, place, or thing outside of us that makes us feel more whole, the sooner we can let go of that belief and understand that our wholeness is in God, is in the source of our being, and not in something outside of us, the sooner we'll be able to let go of those things. And I've, as you know, if you've been watching this show, have had many instances recently of really needing to let go. And there's been so much healing that's been going on in my life, where my really letting go of family members, friends, situations, jobs, all of the stuff that we think builds our life, really letting go of control of that stuff and allowing it to show up in my life in the way it's supposed to without my controlling it, by yielding to the divine, by yielding to the laws of good and the laws of God, and allowing the spirit to inspire me to see what's right, rather than my trying to figure it out or my trying to put the pieces together and build it. Really allowing God to show me. I can share another story. I know I shared one before about hearing a voice when I was looking for somebody who was missing in my life, and I was told go left and found the person. It happened again where this person was in an area of the planet that they didn't know at all, and I was new to the area, and again they went missing. And we went out on a search and drove around and, they took the human footsteps that you're supposed to take when you're trying to find somebody. And I finally just thought, you know what, I need to get really still and I need to get really quiet. So I asked my husband to drive down this one street, and I got out of the car and I just stood on the sidewalk. And to my husband's credit, and I really mean this, he did not rush me. He sat there in the car and waited. And I probably stood there for 5 minutes, which, seems like a long time if you're sitting and waiting in a car for somebody standing on the sidewalk. So I just stood there and I really just listened and wanted to just get a sense of where this person was. And then it felt right to get back in the car. I didn't get I didn't hear a voice, I didn't get a clear answer of direction, but I just got a sense of, okay, it's time to go. So I got back in the car and I said, okay, go down this street. And we went down the street and we got to the end of the street, which was, I don't know, half a city block maybe. And then I looked across this very busy 4-lane street, and right across the street, I went, oh my gosh, there he is. And if I hadn't waited on the side of the road for 5 minutes, we wouldn't have seen him. If I hadn't waited exactly the amount of time that I did, we wouldn't have seen him. We would have missed him. Because at that point, I tracked him on foot and followed him to a place where somebody could then come pick him up and take him to safety, which was a good thing. It was really a good thing. So it just is amazing when we trust God, when we trust Source, when we trust the universe, whatever you want to call it, when we trust the power of love, when we trust and we listen and we follow, not only does it find missing people, it balances relationships, it balances weight, it balances our need for substances, addiction, alcohol, smoking, drugs, whatever it is. It balances all of that out where we just lose the desire for it. If it's something that's not good for us or something that's causing us to be out of balance, we'll lose the desire for it. There's that other line. My battery is low. It's giving me a notice. There's another line which I've talked to you about before, but I've used it so many times in my life, I'm going to share it again. It's that one, desire is prayer, and no loss can occur from trusting God with our desires, that they may be molded and exalted before they take form in words and in deeds. So if you say, I have a desire for, and this was true for me years ago, I was in a relationship of convenience and kind of friends with benefits situation. And we would get together and have benefits. And at one point I thought, I heard a testimony of a guy who was a sex addict. I was not, but this was a healing of a guy who was a sex addict. And he used that line where desire is prayer. And his desire was to have sex. And he worked with a spiritual practitioner, and the practitioner shared that line with him and said, listen, if the book says desire is prayer, then your desire to have sex is your prayer. But if you trust God with that desire, it's going to be molded and exalted before it takes form in words and in deeds. And he trusted that. He trusted that as a promise and put his full faith on that, put his full weight on that. And he found that when he did that, his desire for sex in the form that it was taking at that point, which I guess was not as appropriate as it might be, when he put that desire on God, it was molded and exalted before it took form in words and in deeds, where the desire shifted into a more spiritual desire. And that's what happened with me. With this friend that I had, I realized I basically mimicked that same reasoning, and I said, okay, this is my desire to have sort of this friends and benefits situation, and it just didn't feel right on some level. And I thought, okay, God, this is my desire. This is what I want. Want to get together and have some benefits. And I thought, okay, God, please, I'm going to put this on you, uplift it. And the next time we decided to get together, I sat on the edge of my bed and I thought, okay, this is my sincere desire, and I'm turning this over. And before the person showed up at my apartment, I had been healed of the desire for our relationship to be expressed in that way. And what I had was the desire to have a really deep, true sense of friendship that didn't involve that, because it wasn't appropriate for the level of our relationship. And from that point forward, we had a deeper, more loving friendship that lasted, I'm sure, a lot longer than it would have lasted the other way. I think the other way it was probably more of a short-term thing. And we lasted the rest of our lives. I mean, he has since passed on, which is very sad, but I still feel extremely close to him. And because our relationship was uplifted to a different level, we had a very long-lasting lifetime friendship, which was wonderful and really deep and treasured. So Anyway, that's one thing that has helped me a lot. That line, desire is prayer, and no loss can occur from trusting God with our desires, that they may be molded and exalted before they take form in words and in deeds. That helps with all sorts of addictions, especially food. We all have a desire for something yummy and to, something to taste good and feel full. And all of those desires are good desires, but there's an uplifted version of that desire when we listen and when we're really honest with ourselves. That higher desire is the one that we want fulfilled, not the base desire. Because the base desire is based in the physical senses, and that's not going to last. It's not going to give us true satisfaction. So I'm going to repeat that other quote that I shared before. Consciousness constructs a better body when faith in matter has been conquered. Correct material belief by spiritual understanding, and spirit will form you anew. So the spiritual understanding of who we really are is what's going to form us anew. The spiritual understanding that there is a law of balance. The spiritual understanding that God is in control and we don't need to be. We can yield control to God. We can yield that sense of trying to hold on tight to everything. Yield to God, yield to love, yield to the truth that everything is in balance. If we would just let go of mucking about in it and trying to control it ourselves when we don't know. I mean, just look at the planet. Look at how much we've screwed up. Human beings, thinking they know so much, have screwed up the planet. And if we just leave it alone, go see that movie. If we leave it alone, it is amazing how it balances itself. It's amazing. If we would just get out of the way. If we would get out of the way of our bodies being in balance when it comes to weight loss or comes to weight imbalance, it'll balance itself. If we're honest and we yield, it'll balance itself. I've experienced a little bit of that. I mean, my whole life I've struggled with food and worrying about it, thinking about it, and being addicted to what am I eating next and what am I doing, that whole thing, Weight Watchers and this diet and that diet and what am I eating and what am I not eating and, all of that stuff, doing little apps and just constant. And just in the last year, I mean, it really has been recent, just in the last year, I've finally started to let go and say, you know what? I don't need that much food. I really don't need to be eating as much food as I'm eating. So just knock it off. And B, I don't want to have to run 1,000 miles to counteract all the food I'm eating. So all of that kind of incessant kind of battling against myself, that was going on a lot. So just honestly, it's just in the last year. And I've been struggling with this probably since the latter part of high school. I think the latter part of high school, I started getting into sort of emotional eating. And before that, I never even thought about it. I just ate and I was fine. And I looked great. And then in the latter part of high school, I think I gained I don't know, for me it was a lot. I don't know, it was like 10 or 15 pounds or something. And those of you who struggle with a lot more weight, don't get mad at me. Because when I joined Weight Watchers, I actually have to say this. I joined Weight Watchers and I was not shunned, but people would look at me and would like, what are you doing here? You're not heavy enough, like, And it's like people who struggle with weight, it doesn't matter what their bodies look like. If you struggle with an addiction to food and with an obsession about food, just because you don't look obese doesn't mean you're not struggling just as much as somebody who's obese. I was in pain and struggling mentally a lot. And I felt shunned by people at Weight Watchers. It was really sad. Not everybody, just some people. I would get kind of that look like, what are you doing here? And they had no idea how painful it was for me. They had no idea that my struggle was just as real as their struggle. So don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge people. Don't judge people by the way they look. I suffered the pain of that because I wasn't fat enough to be at Weight Watchers. Well, my head was definitely fat enough. My head was suffering the same struggle as somebody who looked different than I did. Just as much fear, just as much anger, just as much control or lack of control, all of the same, because it's all mental. It's all mental. It's all about that, our view of ourself, how we let fear start taking control, how we then grab on because we're afraid, and we grab on and we try to take control, which we can't, instead of releasing to loving ourselves and loving the fact that there is a law of balance that is in operation. And if we just appeal to that law, it all works out. And if we trust it, I guess there's that combination of loving ourselves and trusting in the divine laws. Anyway, I'm kind of outing myself here of that major struggle. So in the last year, I have to say, I have made progress. And I'm really, really grateful for that progress, to just allow the universe to operate the way it does, to allow balance to take hold. And though my body hasn't changed that much from, high school until now, I look pretty much the same as I always have. The mental struggle has shifted a lot over the last 40 years. And so take heart. If you're struggling with it, take heart. Be kind to yourself. Don't be rigid. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the things that I'm learning, that maybe I can help you not have to go through all the struggle I went through, and maybe you can learn from my mistakes. Love yourselves. Be good to yourself. Be good to yourself. Be good enough to yourself to want to treat yourself well. And have little bites of things. Don't deprive yourself of everything. Have little bites of things. Just have a little bit less of it. And I know it sounds so easy, because I used to hear people say that to me and I'd get so angry. Like, really? That's how you're going to solve the problem? Really? And I'd stop eating this and I'd stop eating that. And I don't know. I try to drink a lot of water. I don't know. I mean, I could tell you all the human stuff I do, but I don't think it's really about that. I think I'm led to do the human things because I'm focused more on the spiritual. My friend Joy, Joy, if you're watching, hello. My friend Joy used to say, focus on something else, Lisa. Do something, focus on what's important in your life. Don't focus on that. That's not important. And she's right. When I would start focusing on my work or focusing on my spiritual study or something, the other stuff would just not be as important, and it wouldn't take so much focus in my thought. And I wouldn't pay so much attention to it, and it would naturally kind of balance itself out. So thank you, Joy, for that, because Joy used to tell me that for years. Dia Dibble! Oh my gosh, hi Dia. And hi Elo, and hi Colleen. I haven't, when I do it on the phone, I never see you guys go by, so I just happened to notice that right now. Dia, I've been talking about weight loss. I've known Dia for years and years and years. Dia and I used to work in Boston together, so it's really nice to see you, Dia. Say hi to Josh. So, I don't know. I've been going on for quite a while. I think I'll stop, because this has been a bit of a long one. If there are any ideas in here that you think somebody might like hearing, please feel free to share this out. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do, and my Facebook page. And let me know what you're thinking. I really do love getting your ideas. This show was actually because of a message. I think maybe it was an email. I don't remember, email or message that I got from one of our viewers. And I love talking about things that you want to hear about. So thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you again soon. Lots of love. Bye.